I feel like I've talked about this game before, in the Tom Clancy and Rainbow Six retrospectives. I've long been a fan of what Door Kickers sets out to do, which is distill the gameplay of hyper-violent video game violence into the tactical chess puzzle it has always been. The classic tactical shooters, the old Rainbow Sixes or the current Arma games, have always been a response to the arcadey gameplay of first-person shooters, so it's odd that Door Kickers manages to provide a lot of those same thrills, but without the FPS engine or control scheme to back them up. Door Kickers is a top-down, pause-and-play strategy puzzle game made for fans of the planning phases from the old Rainbow Six games. You click and drag out a long, complicated chain of orders for your trigger-happy SWAT team to follow, the idea being to breach them into and clear out a fortress of bad guys, who have greater numbers and the defensive advantage. That enemy advantage is the thing that I've always really appreciated about those borderline simulator tactical shooters. Despite putting you in the role of well-funded, over-equipped military commandos, combat in those games was difficult and deadly enough to still make you feel like the underdog. After all, your main characters would die permanently in just one shot, which, when you think about it, kinda sent a powerful message. Anyways, that one-shot kill combat doesn't quite make it all the way into Door Kickers, but a lot of the same qualities of old Rainbow Six games still do. Each level is both a shameless military power trip and an intriguing strategic puzzle. You don't overwhelm the enemy with firepower, you overwhelm them with logistics. So you get that shaky balance between gore and brains that all my favorite pieces of entertainment have. You spend anywhere from 10 minutes to 2 hours carefully planning a Rube Goldberg machine of intricately timed orders, and finally, after countless retries and deaths, you get this visceral 20-second payoff that looks something like this.
I'm on it. Placing charge. Waiting for Alpha. Charge in position.
Alpha, let's go.
Here! I go down. X-ray down. Clear. Showtime. X-ray down. Clear. X-ray down. X-ray down.
Good job. We're done here.
The long planning process and the quick, action-packed payoff heightened the conflict between risk and reward, and that was much of what made Rainbow Six so thrilling. But relying on the dice rolls and cooldown timers of your AI troopers from an overhead perspective is never quite as satisfying a payoff as controlling them yourself from the first person. I hate to keep making those comparisons, though, but Door Kickers does not exist in a vacuum. However, it does stand on its own as a worthy product of its influences. It does things that the tactical shooters it was based on cannot. There's more RTS here than FPS, and surprisingly, there's a lot of casual mobile game influence in there as well. A lot of big, chunky, thumb-sized buttons, levels that can be compressed into one screen, and very few hotkeys to keep track of, and a 3-star rating system that begs you to retry the shorter levels again and again until you max out your score. It really didn't surprise me to learn that this was conceived as an iPhone game, and that's really where most of my gripes come from. The interface could use a healthy dose of complexity. Granted, they did make it easy to click and drag out a route for your troopers that can twist and wind in literally any direction you want it to. Plus, the AI does a great job of looking where it should be looking and checking its corners, but nudging and rerouting the individual links of that chain is impossible, and it's greatly needed, considering how 90% of the game is making minor changes to those existing routes. You can also queue up only one action per door. It treats every one of those as an entry method, even when a lot of the stuff you can do to a door is not an entry method at all. You gotta unlock doors and slide snake cams under doors, but the interface doesn't let you queue those actions up before the actual entry through the door, which means that pre-planned routes for your more stealthy troopers are going to end prematurely. Speaking of stealth, your stealth options here tie into my biggest gripe with the game. It's got yet another one of those slow-ass upgrade systems. Those 3 stars you can earn after every level are used as currency to buy upgrades that are just way too expensive. After 4 to 6 hours of gameplay, you might finally unlock the stealth class, which ended up being an invaluable addition to what was at least my own playstyle. You can move stealth troopers behind enemy lines using other troopers' camera feeds. You can stealth kill multiple enemies at the same time to clear up choke points for others. It's like planning out your own all-gillied up level, and it's great! I spent 2 hours on one of the hardest levels in the game trying to crack it with just 4 stealth guys. Not because I had to, but because I could. I wanted to see if I could, and eventually I did, and it felt incredible. incredible once I finally beat it. And if I was compelled enough to spend that much time doing an entirely self-imposed challenge just for the satisfaction and fun of it, then that probably means the game was doing something right. It just absolutely sucks that such a big part of the game requires hours for you to fill an arbitrary amount of meters to unlock. Door Kickers has great stealth gameplay, and the game is still fun before you unlock it, but once you do, it just turns into such a better game. These levels are very open-ended, they're very modular, sandboxy puzzles with an unlimited amount of solutions. So I don't know why they decided it would be a good idea to lock up the player's toolkit and inflate the prices of its most necessary tools. Maybe the idea was for the progression system to be some kind of tutorial, but it ends up taking a lot of enjoyment out of the early game. Maybe the idea was to use the progression system for incentivizing high scores, and if that was the case, I'd suggest they'd have rather used it in a way that wouldn't shrink the player's toolkit. The core game is about maximizing the utility of that toolkit, so why not have us spend stars on levels instead of tools? After all, you're supposed to play through those levels again and again until you get those 3 stars, and there are a ton of those levels. There are 78 one-off story-free missions that you can play from the start. There are 3 little campaigns where squad deaths remain permanent between missions, plus an excellent hardcore mode that disables retries. There is a mission editor, there is a mission generator, there is a link to modding tutorials right there on the main menu. This game could go on forever, and that's why I think it'll end up providing more than enough hours to justify the $20 price tag. It's a massive pack of levels for a very enjoyable and very modular game design, but you're gonna have to tolerate a slow early game and an interface that doesn't exactly embrace the keyboard. You're also gonna have to bear with production values that are about as high as your usual crowdfunded game. And by that I mean the art and the voice acting aren't super awesome. And unlike, say, Gunpoint, which was also a fast-paced level pack of quirky little stealth puzzles, there's not a lot of personality and style to Door Kickers.
Ready to fire.
Wait, was that David Hayter?
Target left view. You're gonna get wet again. Tango down. They're beautiful, compassionate eyes.
Either one of these guys is doing an uncanny impersonation, or one of these guys is David Hayter. Anyways, Door Kickers is the 3rd big crowdfunded nostalgia game I've played this year, and I'm noticing it made a lot of the same compromises Wasteland 2 did. The art and the voice acting are a little cringy, but you can ignore that. The first act is far less enjoyable than the rest of the game, and a cumbersome interface wastes a lot of your valuable time. But just like those other 2 crowdfunded games, it still manages to remind us of why we are nostalgic for the old games it was based off of. It evokes a lot of the more demanding thrills that modern games have left behind. The grit and the hard-won satisfaction of overcoming intimidating challenges, or the experimental fun of spending hours tinkering with all the different ways you can play through a big open-ended level. I had a blast inching